Nobody talks about this enough. The season when faith feels thin, not gone. You have not walked away. You still believe, at least you think you do. But somewhere along the way, the certainty that used to feel solid has gotten quieter. The prayers that used to feel connected feel like they are going somewhere, but you are not sure where. The faith that carried you through the last hard season feels like it has been worn down by this one. And the hardest part is the guilt that comes with it, because you feel like you should not be here, like a stronger person, a better believer, would not be struggling with doubt right now, like the fact that your faith feels weak is somehow evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you. It is not, and Scripture is remarkably clear about that. Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1 ESV. Read that carefully. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. By definition, faith lives in the space between what you can see and what you are trusting our Father for. If you could see it, it would not be faith, it would be sight. Faith only exists in the gap, and the gap, by its very nature, is uncomfortable, which means the discomfort you are feeling right now is not evidence that your faith is broken. It is evidence that you are actually in the place where faith operates, the uncertainty, the not seeing, the reaching toward something that has not fully arrived yet. That is the terrain of faith. That is where it lives. That is where it always has. Now, Hebrews 11 is one of the most remarkable chapters in Scripture. It is often called the Hall of Faith, and it is essentially a list of people who trusted our Father through situations where the evidence was not there yet, where what they were holding on to had not materialized in the way they hoped, where the gap between the promise and the fulfillment was long and hard and full of moments that must have felt like doubt. Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab. The list goes on. These are not people who had an easy, uncomplicated faith that never wavered. These are people who trusted our Father through genuinely difficult circumstances, through years of waiting, through outcomes that did not always look the way they expected, through seasons where the promise felt very far from the reality they were living in. Abraham left everything he knew to go to a place he had never seen, not knowing where he was going. That is not comfortable certainty. That is walking forward in the dark, trusting a voice that has not given you a map. Sarah believed our Father for a child when her body was well past the age where that was biologically possible. That is not easy faith. That is holding on to a promise that every physical reality in front of you contradicts. Noah built a structure the size of a ship in a place that had never seen that kind of rain for years, while the people around him watched and questioned and mocked. That is not triumphant, effortless belief. That is showing up every single day to do something that makes no sense to anyone watching, because you trust the one who told you to do it. That is what faith actually looks like in the Bible. Not polished certainty, not an absence of questions, not a life where doubt never shows its face. It looks like ordinary, flawed, sometimes struggling people, choosing to trust our Father one more day, even when the evidence is thin and the promise feels far away. Your faith does not have to be strong to be real. It just has to be pointed in the right direction. There is a moment in the Gospels that this scripture brings to mind every time. A father came to Jesus with his son, who was suffering terribly. He had tried everything. Nothing had worked. And he came to Jesus desperate, but honest. He said, "If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said, "All things are possible for one who believes." And the father said something that is one of the most honest, most human things anyone ever said to Jesus. He said, "I believe, help my unbelief." Mark 9:24, I believe, help my unbelief. Both things at once, the faith and the doubt, living in the same sentence. the reaching toward Jesus, and the honest admission that the reach feels unsteady. And Jesus did not send him away for being insufficiently certain. He did not tell him to come back once he had resolved the doubt. He responded to that broken, honest, double-handed faith and healed the boy. That is the God you are dealing with, not a father who requires perfect faith before he will show up. A father who responds to the honest reaching even when it is shaky, even when it comes with doubt still attached to it. So what do you do when your faith feels weak? You do exactly what that father did. You bring what you have, even if what you have feels like not enough. And you are honest about the gap, I believe. Help my unbelief. That is not a failure of faith. That is faith in its most honest and courageous form. Because it takes courage to keep reaching toward our Father when you are not feeling the certainty you think you should feel. It takes courage to keep showing up to prayer when it feels like the connection is thin. It takes courage to stay in the Word, to keep reading, to keep bringing your questions to our Father rather than just quietly stepping back until the doubt passes. The people in Hebrews 11 did not have certainty about everything. What they had was a direction, a persistent orientation toward our Father, even through the seasons when the evidence was slow to arrive. And our Father honored that. Every single time, He is honoring yours too. Even now, even in the thin season, even when the prayers feel quiet and the certainty feels distant and the faith that used to feel solid feels like it has worn down to something smaller. Smaller is not gone. Thin is not finished. The mustard seed is the smallest of all seeds. And Jesus said, that is all the faith you need to move mountains, not a mountain of faith, a seed of it, directed at the right Father. That is enough. Here is what weak faith does not mean. It does not mean our Father has moved. It does not mean He is less present in this season than He was in the last one. It does not mean something has broken between you and Him that cannot be repaired. Our Father does not pull back when your faith gets quiet. He draws near. The same way He drew near to the brokenhearted, the same way He was near to David in the foreign city, the same way He responded to a desperate father who said, I believe and help my unbelief in the same breath. He is near to the weak faith too. He always has been. Keep showing up. Keep bringing what you have, even if what you have is a whisper instead of a declaration. Even if what you have is more question than certainty. Even if the best you can do today is tell our Father honestly that you are struggling to hold on. That honesty, that reaching, that choosing to turn toward Him, even on the thin days, that is faith, real faith, the kind that Hebrews 11 is actually describing. And our Father has never once turned away from it. Open your journal if you have one nearby. What is our Father speaking to you today?